Can everybody see my screen and hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. That's a good first step. I want to thank the committee for allowing me to be here today. I'm excited to get to talk to you guys. I'm not excited to follow John McClough. That's not my favorite. He's amazing. So bear with me. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Hannah Craner Kirsting, and I'm in a pretty unique role. So I'm a third generation cattle rancher here in Gunnison, and I'm also the vice president of the Gunnison County Stockgrowers Association. And then I also work for CSU Extension. So I'm kind of in this unique role, and I'm excited to be here today to talk to you guys. There we go. So also please bear with me. I went to school for Ag Econ, so I always love to talk anything Ag Econ, and I will put it in any presentation you guys will allow me to. So I think it's pretty interesting to look at our economic impact in the Gunnison Valley. So as you can see from the slide, there's about 23,000 head of cows and calves in Gunnison County, with about 113 beef cattle operations. And that total value of our livestock that we sell is just about $18 million. And we sell about $1.7 million worth of forage. So mostly hay, as you guys all know. And there's actually a little bit more. There's about 125 forage operations in Gunnison. And then I think just a fun fact that I like to have everybody think about is that each cow contributes about $300 to $500 to the economy each year. So each time you drive by a cow, now you can think about that. Like I said, please bear with me. I think all these numbers are fascinating. So we have an economic team at CSU Extension that looks at the economic impacts of ag within the Colorado River District region. So this is looking at agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. And they found that that economic impact multiplier is 1.7. So this is just within the Colorado River Basin. So this is not accounting for those dollars that leak out of the area. So that's not statewide, nationally, or internationally. And this would actually be higher if we did look at that. So we can assume for every dollar earned in the ag industry, it is reinvested 1.7 times back into our 15 county region. And we actually fall fifth within this 15 county region. So we fall behind government enterprises, management of companies, finance and insurance, and educational services. And so if we look at this total value, like I talked about in the last slide, was just about $20 million. So if we multiply that by 1.7, we can actually see that our economic impact is $34 million. So I think it's kind of fun to think about that as we drive past ranches every day on our way to work. So you guys know this, every watershed looks completely different. So our ranch is off the main stem of the Gunnison. So that's where I have the most experience. And that's mostly what I'm going to talk about today. Jesse is off the Tomichi. So it's nice to have him here. It's kind of a different point of view and in a valley that's very different than where I am. So you guys already know this, but each watershed primarily raises grass, hay, and beef cattle. But they are very different watersheds. So my experiences are not necessarily the experiences of somebody in the Tomichi. So you all know this, but we're primarily flood irrigated here. So we typically have some sort of dam or diversion in the river or the creek. We divert that water out of the river or creek into our ditches. We then dam our ditches, overfill the blanks, and that's what's considered flood irrigation. As John already talked about, these ditches are run by water rights, or what's known as prior appropriation. So that's pretty simple. First in right. So those who have senior rights, obviously, they were here first, they have the more senior rights. The latecomers have the more junior rights. As the slide mentions, most of our county is flood irrigated, and this flood irrigation is really crucial to our system. So as everybody knows, we don't have a lot of storage here. And so our water table, or our sponge, as we like to call it, is our storage. And flood irrigation allows us to refill this. And this refilling of it allows for some incredible return flows, which we'll talk about here just in a minute. So as everybody already knows, but most of our irrigation is used for either hay or pasture land. And then ag also uses water for livestock purpose. So livestock watering and stuff like that. And I really want to thank Erin Wilson with the Wilson Water Group. These next couple slides are from her, and I can't recreate them and as meaningful as she did, so I just stole them. But this is the Tomichi Creek return flow. So as you can see, these return flows on a drought year are even more pronounced. So as the slide shows, the natural flow on a representative dry year, which was 2018, was about 66,000 acre feet. And they diverted 199,000 acre feet of water in the Tomichi Valley. So this is showing us that we're recycling or getting 3 times the amount of water from these return flows. So it's kind of incredible. I think the Ohio Creek Valley shows some of the similar things as the Tomichi does, but the Tomichi by far, I think, shows these return flows the best. And these return flows are even still pronounced in a wet year. So you see that the natural flow is 211,000, and then we diverted 223,000 acre feet. So we're still diverting more water than would naturally be in the creek to begin with. So it's kind of incredible. And these return flows are really obviously important for our irrigation use, but they also help other water users such as recreation, fishing, and then it also helps recharge our wells. So these return flows are really incredible. And I think Erin could expand more on these, but it's just really incredible data to look at and kind of see just how important these return flows really are to us. And as the temperature increases and our climate changes, these return flows are even more important. So I think this really speaks to just how important our traditional ag practices are, just how important that flood irrigation is. And when we think about our water being reused 3 times, if we were to change our traditional ag practices, would that still be possible? So I think it's really interesting and important to think about how different our valley could look if we didn't flood irrigate. So we have some unique challenges here in the Gunnison Basin. As you all know, we have a very short growing season. According to Bruce Bartleson, it is 88 days right now, which has actually grown. It used to be 60 days. So some pros and cons to climate change is that we actually have a longer growing season, but not a lot grows in 88 days. So we are still primarily raising grass hay and beef cows because those both things can thrive in a short growing season. And then as I showed you in that previous slide, the Tomichi Valley really shows the importance of return flows. Our ranch is on the main stem of the Gunnison, like I said, and we see similar things, not quite to those extremes, but we rely on subbing from users above us on the ditch. So if our neighbors were to switch to a pivot or something like that, it would have a drastic impact on us. And it's really important that we just remember how interconnected all of us are. And then agriculture has some really critical times that we need to use water, which we'll talk about in just a second. So like I said, we have some critical times. So we hay late July, early August, typically on a normal year. And it's really critical for us to get that water on first thing, get the ground wet to start the process of getting our grasses to grow. So one of the most important things we do is grow grass for our livestock and hay. So that's really important that we have that spring irrigation season. And then obviously we try to keep it wet until we hay. When we hay, we either dry up the ditches or greatly reduce them to dry out the ground so that we can put our haying equipment on our pastures. And then following haying, it's also really critical for us to get that water back on, refill that sponge so that the next spring we can use that water as quickly and most efficiently as possible. So like I said, we kind of have those 3 really critical times that we use our water. We've worked a lot in the basin, and I think it's something we can all be really proud of to make ourselves as efficient as possible. So Jesse who's going to talk next, invented auto tarps. So it's essentially a Bluetooth head gate. So, we can set them to go off in the middle of the night. We can set them to go off while we're at work. So it can really allow us to use the water most efficiently. We don't actually have to be physically out there to put in our head gates. So it allows us to use our water when it's most efficient. And then the Upper Gunnison has funded many projects to help us improve our old infrastructure. A lot of these infrastructures are over 100 years old and they're failing. There's a life to them, and a lot of them have reached that life. And we're really lucky that we have been able to get a lot of funding in our valley to improve and upgrade all of these older structures. And then we've tried a lot of drought resistant seed mixes. There's multiple ranchers across the valley, extensions tried a couple to work on different seed mixes that can withstand the drought that we're all faced with right now. So like I said, we're off the main stem of the Gunnison. This is where I have most of my knowledge, but we're kind of unique. We're at the end of the ditch. So yes, we have senior water rights, but if there's no water in the ditch, that doesn't matter. And then, like I said, we have limited carrying capacity of our ditches. So we alternate days for irrigation. So for us personally, we irrigate for 5 days and then we're off for 5 days. So if it's a great rainy year, that can be amazing. It can rain our off days, and we have no drying. But if it's a drier year, we can have some drying in those 5 days. So for us, irrigation is definitely a struggle, and it can look different in different situations. This picture actually is around my house, which subs all the time. So like I said, it's really critical, and we're really tied to what our neighbors are doing. So my front pasture looks amazing because when the neighbor irrigates, I sub. So just kind of shows again just how interconnected all of these different systems are. And then, traditionally, quote unquote, efficient irrigation practices aren't really effective in Gunnison. So like I said, we rely so heavily on these return flows and subbing that if we've switched to a more, what we think of as conventionally efficient, like a pivot, we lose all of those benefits. So how do we work within this system and its constraints to be as efficient as we possibly can? And I think that's something I'm really excited for this committee to work on. And then, another thing that I think we all know, but it's kind of nice to put some numbers to it, is that we're losing irrigated land. So the 2022 Census of Ag showed 48,000 acres in irrigated pasture or land. And then the 2017 Census of Ag showed 57,000 acres in irrigated land. So we've lost almost 10,000 acres just in those couple of years. So, as we lose land to development and we lose irrigated land, we're using less and less water. But that in turn also has an impact on our water table and our return flows and subbing and stuff like that. So it's kind of an interesting problem. As we use less water, we're actually impacting our return flows. As you can see, I think, irrigation, ag plays a huge role in our system, and we're very much affected by drought, both economically and other ways. So really excited to be here and be a part of this committee and see what kind of solutions we can put forth. Like I said, I work for CSU Extension. So if you guys ever need anything, we're here. We're at the fairgrounds. We're here a lot. So stop in at any time. And thanks again for allowing me to present today.